Little Red Riding Hood. In a small village, there lived a girl who always wore a cute red hooded cape. She was known as Little Red Riding Hood, and she was the most popular girl in the village, bright and loved by everyone. One day, Little Red Riding Hood received news that her grandmother was unwell. She volunteered to deliver some things to her, with a basket of sweets and fruits prepared by her mother. Little Red Riding Hood set off for her grandmother's house. "Listen carefully, Little Red Riding Hood," her mother said with a worried tone. "Go straight to your grandmother's house without wandering off the path, and never talk to strangers, understood?" Little Red Riding Hood smiled and replied, "Yes, I understand. I promise I won't cause any trouble or stray from the path. Leave it to me." And with that, Little Red Riding Hood confidently left home. Walking along the path, Little Red Riding Hood felt the gentle air and sunshine of the forest. The birds were singing, and the sound of rustling leaves made her steps lighter. Suddenly, a large gray wolf appeared from the bushes. Well, what's a sweet little girl like you doing out here?" the wolf asked in a polite voice. Little Red Riding Hood was startled for a moment, but reassured by the wolf's friendly demeanor, she opened her mouth and replied, "Hello, Mr. Wolf. I'm on my way to my grandmother's house. She's not feeling well, so I'm bringing her these treats." The wolf listened to her words with a gentle smile. "That's very kind of you," he said. "Which way are you going?" "There's a shortcut, but the longer way has a much nicer view." Little Red Riding Hood hesitated but felt that the longer way sounded more fun, so she chose that path. However, while Little Red Riding Hood was taking the long way, the wolf used the shortest route and arrived at her grandmother's house. The wolf went inside, subdued the grandmother, and disguised himself as her. He lay in bed, waiting for Little Red Riding Hood to arrive. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood stopped along the way to admire beautiful flowers and mushrooms, taking her time. When she finally arrived at her grandmother's house, she was a little out of breath, but had a cheerful smile as she knocked on the door. "Grandmother, it's me," Little Red Riding Hood called. A low voice answered from inside the room, "Come in, dear. The door's unlocked." When Little Red Riding Hood entered the room, she saw her grandmother lying in bed, completely covered with a blanket. As Little Red Riding Hood approached, she felt that something was different. "Grandmother, what big ears you have," Little Red Riding Hood asked. The wolf, deepening his voice, replied, "All the better to hear you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood continued, "And what big eyes you have." The wolf answered again, "All the better to see you with, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood took a small step back and finally asked, "And what a big mouth you have." At that moment, the wolf let out a laugh, baring his fangs. "All the better to eat you with," he roared. Just as Little Red Riding Hood was about to scream, a huntsman who was passing by heard the commotion and came to the rescue. The huntsman quickly chased away the wolf, rescuing Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood hugged her grandmother, crying, "I'm so sorry. I didn't listen to you, Mother. I talked to a stranger and even wandered off the path," she sobbed. Her grandmother smiled gently and hugged Little Red Riding Hood. "It's all right, dear. The important thing is that you don't repeat the same mistake. And thanks to the kind huntsman, we're both safe. Be grateful to him." Afterward, while having tea with the huntsman, her grandmother told them old stories from the village. Little Red Riding Hood deeply regretted how dangerous her actions had been, and learned the importance of being cautious. More than anything, she reaffirmed her bond with her grandmother and the huntsman, who had saved them. When Little Red Riding Hood returned home, she told her mother everything. "From now on, I will always listen to you. To protect myself," she promised firmly. Her mother, sensing Little Red Riding Hood's growth, gently hugged her. "This was a dangerous experience, but I'm so glad you're safe. From now on, be more careful, and remember that it's also important to have trust in others." Little Red Riding Hood nodded deeply, engraving in her heart the warmth of her family and the importance of the caution needed to protect it. From then on, Little Red Riding Hood was loved even more by everyone in the village, becoming a cherished figure as a girl with courage and wisdom.